Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's State of the Market update using SONAR. So the market continues to move sideways, very flat, not that exciting of a trend this week. Tender rejection rates have hovered around this 12.36 value all week long in this short week. After declining a little bit after Thanksgiving, carriers, of course, have come back into the market strong. Even though volume did remain elevated around Thanksgiving, tender rejection rates fell rapidly that Monday after Thanksgiving, even though volume remained a little bit elevated throughout that week. Volume has since come back down. Pulling up the Outbound Tender Volume Index United States for the last year, we can see that this value has dropped off quite a bit after this surrounding surge in the holiday period surrounding Thanksgiving. We're at a value of 96.96, which indicates we're about 3.04% lower than the volume we experienced on March 1st. Pretty low. It's not terribly unusual this time of year to see lower volumes after the Thanksgiving push. It's kind of the big retail season, so everybody's kind of already put their stuff into their warehouses, and then they're waiting to see what happened as consumers have bought up, in store volume, or nowadays it's e-commerce. E-commerce represents about 20% of total retail in the United States, so it's a little bit different than it used to be. The Toys R Us's are gone. You got Target and Walmart kind of holding the front on the brick and mortar stores. Things are a little bit, they're all housed in DCs. So these big truckload pushes are going to go and replenish those warehouses, not as much going to these retail centers or these storefronts as much anymore. But as those kind of decline in volume, they'll order more truckloads leading into the Christmas area, and that'll be dependent on service. It won't be as big of a volume push as much as it will be for service reasons, as they're trying to get that stuff onto the shelves or into the DC and the market that it needs to be in. The overall market itself, I'm going to pull up the map for the Outbound Tender Rejection Index weekly change, just to kind of give a quick overview of what's happening in the rest of the country. This regionalized destabilization we see in Maine, not terribly unusual to see that happen in this low volume market, but volume has come up in Maine over the last week or two. A lot of carriers will avoid Maine, not a lot of freight coming out of there in general, but it is troublesome to drive through as well, especially this time of year. You've got snow and all sorts of other things that kind of get in the way. A lot of low population center, not a lot going on in there in general, and then you can't get back out. But this time you might be able to find a load out. Doing a little bit of research on the Tender Rejection Index length of haul, I found that the M-Tri is actually the one that is causing most of the concern over capacity restriction. What that is about 250 to 450 miles away from this area here, which is about, if you can follow the cursor, this line right here. So anything kind of inside of this circle that I'm making with my mouse hand, that's basically all the way down to Philadelphia, Harrisburg area. So anything in this area here. So there's some decent loads coming out of Maine this week if somebody's willing to go over there and take care of it. Another area is this Midwestern Iowa area here. Rock Island is actually a pretty decent sized market by volume. It represents about 1% of the total outbound volume in the country as of today. Has an increase of about 4.15% of their tender rejection index. So again, it's not like it's really way out there. Maine is kind of, in the sticks compared to Rock Island. Rock Island is reasonably close to St. Louis and Chicago, so not a big stretch to get a truck over there. Otherwise, it's a pretty slow time for, any kind of market instability. You can see the tender rejections are pretty much falling in a lot of these areas here, and then white. It's just flat everywhere else in the big markets of Los Angeles, Atlanta, Chicago, all pretty flat. Not a lot going on in terms of capacity. So shippers should be pretty happy right now because they should be staying pretty high in their route guides. Carriers, you're probably able to move your freight, your trucks around, I should say. with relative ease. And then, of course, the brokers probably aren't having a great time right now because there's just not a lot of volatility in terms of activity. Rates may be volatile in terms of service requirements. There may be some shippers out there that need to get their freight moving a little bit faster than normal, which is typical this time of year. That keeps rates a little bit more elevated. But you're going to have to be very wary of where you're, who you're talking to this time of year, as you're going to have to make the most of every opportunity that you see. So, for instance, here you could probably, if you have a carrier that sits up in Maine this week, targeting any load board that you see a Maine load on there might be the thing to do. Well, that's about it for this week. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Enjoy. Thanks.